Good day to you. Welcome back to Metric Hub. Today I'm going to do a revision on personal management N6 exam preparation, exam revision. Right. So let's go to question 1.1. Choose a description from column B that matches a description in column A. Write only the letter A to J next to the question number. Right. So 1.11, filtering. When you filter, it means that you eliminate some of the information that you think they are not necessary, or you only want to hear what you want to hear. Right. So the answer is the answer is H. Right. H. The answer is H. The receiver makes assumptions about a message received according to what is more acceptable to him. Thus, filtering is a communication barrier. It's a communication barrier, right? So let's go to 1.12, narrow span of control. Narrow span of control. Narrow span of control. Narrow span of control. Right. A narrow span of control is when managers with relatively few subordinates reporting to the leading manager. That's what you call a narrow span of control, which is E. E. Right. Let's go to question 3. Question 1.13, leadership. Leadership. Right. Leadership is the ability to inspire another person to work enthusiastically and effectively to accomplish objectives. That's leadership, which is B. Right. So let's move on to question 1.14, work experience. Work experience. Right. A criterion of the skills of employees, which is C. Right. Let's go to 1.15, interacting groups. Interacting groups are those groups that work together, meaning to say the work of the output of another is the input of the other. So a group, the groups work together, and the work of one group is the input for another, which is A. Right. Let's go to 1.16, cohesiveness. Cohesiveness simply means unity within members of the group, right? So the answer is G. There is unity in the group and members pull together in the same direction, right? Which is what? G. Right. These are the advantages of what? Of groups, right? 1.17, blockers. Right? Blockers. When one stop new idea with continual negative reactions, it means that the person is a what? Is a blocker. Right? So let's go to 1.18, communication barrier. A communication barrier is anything that distracts or that disturbs communication to be effective, right? For example, the receiver makes assumption about a message received according to what is more acceptable to him. It becomes a barrier. It becomes a communication barrier, right? Let's go to 1.19, job rotation. Job rotation, it is when employees are given an opportunity to perform all tasks within the organization. Right. So the answer is J. All employees are given an opportunity to perform all the tasks in the department. That is what you call job rotation. Job rotation. 1.110. Right. Job enlargement. Right. Is when you are expanding a number of tasks, making up a particular job. When you add more tasks on a job, that's what you call job enrichment. Right. Let's move on to question 1.2. Indicate whether the following statement is true or false, right? 1.21, according to Maslow's theory, individuals are only motivated by higher order needs such as status. That's true. That's true. They are motivated by higher order needs such as status, right? 1.22, right? 1.22, motivated employees voluntarily and enthusiastically do more than what is required when motivated. That's true. When people are more motivated, they do more than they are required to do, right? Let's go to 1.23. Job enrichment is based on the application of Maslow's hierarchy of theory, right? That's true. That's true. It is based on Maslow's hierarchy, right? Let's go to 1.24. Job design helps employees to concentrate on variety, priority task and to find more efficient ways of completing the task. That's a true statement. Job design, whereby we eliminate what is not necessary, right? So that a person will be able to work more efficiently, right? Let's go to 1.25. Excellent communication is important to successfully achieve the vision, the mission, and the goals of the organization. That's true. That's true. That's true. Right. Let's go to 1.26. An open door policy is when employees can talk to their superior at any time about certain problems. That's a true statement. That's a true statement. That's what you call open door policy. Right. 1.27. Conformity is the acceptance of groups norms by its members. Conformity is the acceptance of group norms by its members, right? Number 7, that's true. That's true. That's true. All right, let's go to 1.28. Social interaction may affect the behavior and performance of the employees either positively or negatively. That's social interaction may affect the behavior and performance of the employees either positively or negatively. That's true. Right. Let's go to 1.29. A group is a collection of individuals who interact with one another to achieve common goals. That's a true statement. That's a true statement. Right? A group is a collection of individuals who interact with one another to achieve a common goal. Right? Let's go to 1.210. An autocratic style of management leads to effective communication and creative employees. That's false. That's false. Democratic leadership style does that, right? The correct answer is democratic leadership style. Right, let's go to question 1.3. Various options are given as possible answers to the following questions. Choose the answer and write only the letter A to D next to the question number. 1.31, an external motivator is a factor that is outside the job itself, such as when an employee is given, right? When an employee is given his or her own office, that's what we call an external motivator. An external motivator. Let's go to question 1.32. Job rotation as a job design method is used by managers to influence the motivational level of employees. It is, right, it is when employees are given the opportunity to perform all the tasks in the department. Right. D. Let's go to 1.33. Selective perception is one of the barriers to communication. It is when the message is translated according to the person's motivation experience, background, interests, expectations, and other personal characteristics. Right. Let's move on to 1.34. An informal group can be categorized based on the needs of the individuals. The needs of the individuals. Right. So let's go to 1 point. Can be categorized according to the members having the same values and attitudes, not D. C is the answer, not D. Right. 1.35, individual group members react to frustration by, how do they react to frustration? Right. By being assertive and uncooperative and pursuing their goals at the expense of others. Individual members react to frustration by being assertive and uncooperative and pursuing their goals at the expense of the others. Right. So they deal with frustration that way. Right. So let's move on to question 2. Question 2. Answer any 4 questions. Right. So question 2, unfortunately, I'm not gonna read the scenario. Right. So name and explain 2 ways in which a job can be redesigned by a manager. Right. So it can be redesigned through job enlargement, and job rotation. Right. So let's move on to 2.2. Explain 4 distinct parts of management by objective. Right. So 4 distinct parts of management by objective includes 1, goals. So we're talking about setting of goals or setting of objectives. Setting of objectives. Right. So we're saying the objectives are supposed to be, must be specific, must be measurable, must be realistic, right, etc. Right. And then 2, participation. Right. So we are saying employees are part of the decision-making process. Employees are part of the decision-making process. So we need to say they are participating in the decision-making. They participate in decision-making. Right. 3, right. We're talking about time limits, whereby employees must establish what? The objective within a specific time frame. Employees must accomplish the task or the objectives within a specific time frame. Within a specific time frame. And lastly, we have evaluation. Evaluation, whereby you're saying employees' performance are measured against performances. Employees' performance are measured against standards. That's how the performance are evaluated. Right. Let's go to question 2.3. Question 2.3. State 6 disadvantages of management by objective. So we are going to state disadvantages of management by objective. Disadvantages of management by objective. Right. So these include we are saying success achievement is in a short time. Right. Success achieved in a short time is overemphasized. They overemphasize what? Success achieved in a short time. Two, it is difficult to set measurable objectives. Difficult to set measurable objectives. 3, you can find that management may not be able to sufficiently reward employees. Management might not be able to sufficiently reward employees for objectives achieved. For objectives achieved. Right. And also you can find that it is a relatively inflexible system. It is a relatively inflexible system. It is a relatively inflexible system. And management by objective burdened with too much paperwork and record keeping. It burdened managers are burdened with too much paperwork. Too much paperwork. With too much paperwork and record keeping. And record keeping. Right. And lastly, conflict can arise. Conflict can arise which will reduce the possibility of achieving objectives. Of achieving objectives. Right. Okay, let's move on to question 2.4. Question 2.4. Right. Discuss 5 variables. Discuss 5 variables that will motivate the employees in here section using Milton's theory of motivation. Right. So the first variable that we can talk about is whereby it indicates that people employed by an organization have the necessity, ability to do the work, so they can be motivated because the organization has confidence in their ability to perform. And then the second variable is which says that employees who state that they have the acceptable level of skills and ability must also want to perform the task assigned to them. So if employees feel negative about an aspect of a job or a job environment, they will not want to do the job and will consequently not be productive. And then the third variable states that self-esteem of an employee has influenced the motivation process. Meaning to say, if he has a good self-esteem, he has a sense of self-belief to perform effectively. And then the fourth variable, whereby it is talking about the combination of a job content, characteristics such as the type of the job, level of participation in decision making, amount of feedback, perception of job importance, and explanation of tasks by managers who have either a positive or a negative influence. And then the fourth variables, which is the combination of characteristics found in a specific work environment, such as the immediate work environment, where friends, colleagues, and immediate supervisors influence the ability of an employee to perform. So the organizational culture includes and maybe organizational records system or management of conflict or level of participation, support and structures and leadership style. Right. So let's move on to question 2.5. 2.5. State 4 limitations of job enrichment that may be encountered by a manager. So here we're going to state job, we're going to state job enrichment limitations, which are the disadvantages. Right, limitations of a job enrichment. Limitations of a job enrichment or disadvantages. Right. So we can find that a job requiring low levels of skills cannot be easily enriched, right? A job with what? With low level of skills with a low level of skill is, sorry, cannot, or skills cannot be enriched to sophistication of technology would make it impossible to make job interesting. Sophistication of technology would make can make it impossible for the job to be interesting, right? And also, there are some employees who are not concerned about um, job enlargement. Some employees are not concerned about job enrichment. They're not concerned about job enrichment. And you can find that some employees fear that the change could lead them to loss of jobs. Can lead to loss of jobs. Right. So let's go to 2.6. 2.6. 2.6. State 5 in job enrichment methods that can be used by a manager to motivate his or her employees. So we are going to talk about enrichment methods. We're going to list job enrichment methods. Job enrichment methods. Job enrichment method. Sorry. We're going to list the job enrichment method. Job enrichment methods. So this includes 1, you can make the employees part of the team. An employee part of a team. 2, we can ensure that employees are fully responsible. They are fully responsible. Right. You can also combine the tasks so that employees perform all the tasks that make up a process. Combine tasks to make a process. Or they can delegate new and more difficult tasks to employees. And difficult tasks to employees. Right. You can delegate tasks to employees or allow employees the opportunity to plan the work method. Right. They also can involve employees in the analysis and change of aspects of the work environment. Right. So let's move on to question 3. To question 3, communication. Right. Unfortunately, I'm not going to read the scenario. I'm going to answer questions. Right. So, 3.1, name 4 barriers for effective communication that might also have been experienced in the company mentioned above. So, I'm just going to list the barriers to communication. I'm going to list the barriers to communication. Question 3. I'm going to list the barriers to communication. Question 3, 3.1. Right. Barriers to effective, barriers for effective communication. Barriers for effective communication. So this includes noise, which is a physical one, physical barrier. We have filtering. There is emotions. There is language. We also have non-verbal communication as a barrier. Sometimes the non-verbal can contradict what verbal communication, which causes what? Communication breakdown. We also have physical environment. The physical environment. The time pressure. And lastly, communication overload. Communication overload, when you have a lot of information at your disposal. Right. So let's go to 3.2. Describe the elements of the communication process. The elements of the communication process. Right. So here I'm going to list elements of the communication process. Elements of the communication process. Elements of the communication process. Right. So this includes, we have sender, the person who's going to send the message. We have the receiver, the person who's going to receive the message. We have encoding when the sender formulates thoughts into a message. We have decoding when the receiver interprets the message using a code that he can understood. We have noise, which is anything that disturbs communication. We also have channel, which is the way of transporting the message. We have the message, which is the information that is being sent. Right. 6, 7. There are 7 barriers to communication. So let's move on to the next question, which is 3.3. 3.3. Right. Explain the benefits of using a functional organization structure. Right. Benefits of a functional 3.3. Right. 3.3. Benefits of a functional organizational structure. Right. You can find that it makes it easier to develop specialist competence. Makes it easier to develop specialist competencies. Right. And then you can find that it ensures management has control over the results. There's control over results. Right. And also it enhances that operating efficiency in each functional area. It enhances operating efficiency in each area within the organization. Right. And also, it ensures that employees have clear understanding of where he fits in. Ensures that employees have clear understanding of where he is going. He fits in where he fits. Right. Right. So let's move on to 3.4. State 6 practical guidelines for successful communication in an organization. Right. So we're going to 3.4 guidelines for effective communication. Guidelines for effective communication. Right. You're supposed to choose the correct for effective communication. Guidelines for effective communication. Right. 1, choose the correct communication channel. You're supposed to choose the correct communication channel. 2, you're supposed to listen carefully. To feedback. 3, you're supposed to create a climate of trust. Create a climate of trust. Action must match the message. Action must match the method. The message must match the message. Action must match the message. 5, use simple vocabulary. Avoid ambiguous words. Ensure personalized communication. Right. And also use immediate supervisors to communicate within the organization. Use immediate supervisors as a channel of communication. Right. And lastly, communication should be a two-way process. Communication should be a two-way process. Let's go to question 3.5. Question 3.5. Discuss 4 techniques that can be applied by a manager to improve effective communication in organization. So these are the techniques that I have discussed earlier on. Right. There was a mix-up here. This is question 5, 3.5, whereby I was answering supposed to be techniques, not guidelines. These are techniques. Right, so what about guidelines? Guidelines includes a climate of trust as well. There are guidelines, there are techniques. They also appear on both sides. Right. Allow questions to ensure that the communication is a two-way process. Repeat the communication when necessary. What else? Where possible, communication should be in a language that the receiver can understand. Instructions and explanation must be clear, simple, and specific. Right. So let's move on to question 4. Question 4, group dynamics. Right. Group dynamics. So let's go to question 4.11. I'm going to read the scenario. Right. State 3 characteristics of an effective communication. So effective groups. Characteristics of effective groups includes characteristics of an effective group. Right. For a group to be effective, one, there should be a common goal. There should be a common goal. And also, members interact. Members interact. Members interacts with each other. Three, members agrees that they belongs to the group. That they belong to the group. Right. Number 4, members influence each other. Members influence each other. Members influence each other. Right. And also, the group will have a leader. The group will have a leader. They have a leader. And also, members influence each other. Okay, I've already spoken it. So, you find that members handle conflicts in a constructive way. Group handles conflict constructively. So we've mentioned more than 3. Right, let's go to 1.1 to name and explain 3 categories of informal group interaction. Right. So just gonna list and then explain. Right. Question 1, 4.12. Right. Informal groups. Right. So this includes 1 with what you call reference groups. Reference groups. Right. Here it is where members have the same values and attitudes. And then 2, we have social groups. Right, where members gather together for friendship and for relaxation. Right. And then 3, we have interest groups. Where groups members, they They affiliate with each other to achieve a common interest. Right. Right. So lastly, we have what we call we have the reference group, social groups, interest groups, reference groups, social groups, interest groups. Right. So let's move on to 4.13. State and explain 5 factors that can influence the structure and dynamics of groups. Right. So let's talk about factors influencing the structure of informal groups. Factors influencing the structure of informal groups. So this includes 1, formal leadership. Formal leadership, right? Which means that every group has is formally appointed will formally appoint a leader, right? Right. So another is the roles. Roles, which simply mean that every individual has a role or a part to play in a group, right? Right. And then there is norms to also influence what? The structure, whereby you're saying they are accepted or acceptable standards of behavior of each member of the group, right? We have status, which is the importance of each what person in the group. So it refers to the position or rank of the individual member, right? We have the size of the group, right, which affects the overall behavior of the group. Smaller groups are faster at completing tasks, but not necessarily as competent in solving problems like large groups, right? And then composition as well. Composition as well, right? It also influence what? Uh, groups, groups. Right. Influence the structure of and dynamics of groups, not informal, just structure and dynamics of groups. Next, let's go to 4.3. 4.2. Conflict is natural part of the workplace and will always be present in groups. 4.21. State 3 possible causes of conflict. We're going to state possible causes of conflict. Possible causes. 4.21. Causes of conflict in a group. In a group, right? This includes a win-loss situation or win-loss situation. A win-loss situation. 2, when two parties disagree, on how to reach a goal, how to reach a goal. It also causes what? Conflict. Like it might be due to seniors abusing juniors. It also causes conflict. And also when two parties have different perception. Have different perception. And lastly, when change is implemented and people are threatened by it. And people are threatened, or people feel threatened by the change. It also causes what? Conflict. Right. So let's move on to question 4.2.2. State the following regarding group conflict: 3 negative consequences and 3 positive consequences. Right. 4.22. Right. Negative consequences of conflicts. Negative consequences of conflict includes 1, members who regard each other as enemies, not opponents. And not opponents. And also, hostility increases and a hostile environment will increase. There will be loss of production. And you can find that decision making will slow down. Will slow. Motivation decreases. Right. And also, there will be relationship breakdown. Relationship breakdown. Relationship breakdown. Right. What about the positive consequences? Positive consequences? Positive consequences of conflicts. Right. This includes 1, new values and norms are created. New values, norms, and subsystems. 2, you can find that problems can be aired and solution will be found. Tenuous solution can be found. And also it can be educational. It can be educational. As well as new innovative ideas. New innovative ideas are created. Right. So let's move on to question 4.2.3. 4.2.3. State and explain 3 ways in which group conflicts can be managed. How to manage group conflict. How to manage group conflict. 1. You can reduce intergroup conflict by determining the goals. Determining a common goal. We can also do negotiation. Negotiation and bargaining. And bargaining. As well as by organizing intergroup problem solving. And lastly, by spreading resources. Spreading resources evenly throughout the departments. By spreading the resources evenly throughout the department. Right. So let's move on to question 5. Question 5. Right. Question 5. Question 5. Right. So 5.1. 5.1. Study 2 factors that influence an effective decision making. Right. The factors that can influence decision making includes team dynamics, team dynamics. 2, the steps and techniques of decision making. Steps and techniques of decision making. Right, let's go to 5.2. 5.2. The trained theory of leadership views leaders as different from other people. is they believe that leaders possess outstanding characteristics. State 8 characteristics of leaders according to trait theory of leadership. Right. Trait includes physical, healthy, physically fit, mentally fit, and then they're supposed to have a high level of intelligence, supposed to have charisma and courage, they're supposed to have determination, a leader must be honest, they must be having the ability to make decisions, they must be able to have a good understanding of human nature, is supposed to have a high level of energy. A high level of energy is supposed to be energetic. Energetic, supposed to be energetic. High level of energy. High level of energy. Yeah. So let's move on to question 5.3. State 4 differences between state 4 differences each that may be experienced between leadership and management. Give the answer in the following format. Right. So we're going to differentiate between management and leadership. So question 5.4, 5.3. 5.3, difference between leadership and management. Right. So I'm going to differentiate the difference between management and leadership. Right. So you can find that the leader requires personal power. The leader requires personal power, whereas the manager requires position power. Position power. Right, you can find that the leader is concerned with inspiring other people to work enthusiastically. Right, whereas the manager is concerned with the effectiveness and efficiency to accomplish objectives. Leaders are innovative. Leaders are innovative. Well-list managers are administrators. Leaders focus on people. They focus on people. Whilst managers focuses on the system. Right. A leader, right. A leader develops. It develops. Whilst the manager maintains what has been developed. So the leader inspires trust. The leader inspires trust. Trust, whilst the manager rely on control. Rely on control. So these are the difference between a leader and leadership and management, right? So let's go to question 5.4. Fully explain Douglas McGregor's theory X and Y of leadership by giving the answer in this format, right? So we are going to tabulate McGregor's theory X and Y. 5.4. Theory X and theory Y. McGregor's theory X and theory Y. Right. So theory X, they're saying they dislike work. These people, they dislike work. These ones, they like to work. These ones do not want responsibilities. Do not want responsibilities. Theory X. These ones want responsibilities. And then theory X, they do not have a lot of ambitions. Do not have a lot of ambition. These ones, they do have a lot. They do have a lot of ambitions. Right. Right. So theory X employees, they need direction to perform. They need direction to perform. They need to be directed. Direction to perform. These ones, they are innovative. Yeah, innovative. Right. So that's the difference between theory X and theory Y. Theory X employees, they dislike work, they try to avoid it. While is the theory Y, they like work and they want to do so. Working is natural as rest or play to them. While is the theory X, they do not want responsibilities. While theory Y, they want responsibility. They even want challenging work. And then theory X, they do not have a lot of ambitions. And then theory Y, they have ambitions, right? Theory X, they need direction to perform, meaning to say they need to be directed. They need to be controlled, to manage to perform. But theory Y, they are innovative. They don't need uh, supervision. Let's move on to 5.5. State 10 steps that are followed in the decision-making process. Steps in the decision-making process. Steps in the decision-making process. Steps in decision-making process. Steps in decision-making process. Steps in decision-making process. Ten steps. Right. So this is an important question that you need to master. The first step is you diagnose and define the problem. And define the problem. And then step number 2, you gather and analyze relevant data. Number 3, you formulate the real problem in writing. Number 4, you develop alternatives, solutions. Number 5, you evaluate alternatives. Number 6, you then select the best alternative. Select the best alternative. You select the best alternative. Number 7, you then you set the criteria. Set the criteria. To evaluate the chosen alternatives. Number 8, you then determine the possible consequences determine the possible consequences. Right. Of the chosen solution, and then you implement the decision. And lastly, you evaluate the effectiveness of the decision. On an ongoing process. Right. So you diagnose and define the problem. You gather and analyze relevant data. You formulate the real problem in writing. You develop alternative. You then evaluate alternatives. You select the best alternative. You set the criteria for evaluating the chosen alternative. You determine possible consequences. You implement the decision. And lastly, you evaluate the effectiveness of the decision on an ongoing process. So let's go to question 6.1. Name two objectives of implementing the human resource information system. Objectives of implementing human resource information system is to: 1, the objectives of implementing the human resource system is to speed up the provision of accurate data, the provision of accurate data. 2, to reduce the amount of people required to perform routine administration. Required to perform routine administration. So let's go to question 6.2. State and describe 4 criteria for evaluating a computerized human resource system. Right. 6.2. Criteria for evaluating include: 1, must be cost effective. 2, must be user friendly. 3, the system must meet the needs for which it is being purchased. for which it is being purchased. Right. And also, the system must have adequate supply, support, and maintenance. Must have adequate supplier, support, and maintenance. Right. Right. So let's move on to uh, question 6.4. Differentiate between a line manager and a staff manager by giving the answer. Right. So a line manager line managers, they are directly managing people. While the staff manager is whereby the manager is providing a service to the manager in charge of the main activities of the business. Right. And you can find that a line manager will be responsible for directly supervising the work of the subordinates in the department, while a staff manager is a dual role whereby he manages employees in his department as well as in other departments. Right. So let's move on to question 6.5. Management by objective MBO is the method used in the process of performance management appraisal and employee development. State 4 performance criteria that a manager and employee will discuss during this process. Right. We're talking about criteria that they will discuss at 6.5. Right. So the performance objectives that the employee needs to accomplish. Performance objective. That the employee needs to establish or to accomplish. Two, the period of time. The period of time. The period of time after which actual performance will be reviewed. After which the actual performance will be reviewed. Will be reviewed. Three, the way in which the performance review will be conducted. Which the performance review will be conducted. And lastly, the improvement that will be attained. The improvement that will be attained. Improvement that will be attained. Thank you so much for watching. Wish you the best. Please go into the exam knowing all the answers, knowing all the answers from this question paper. Please do not forget to subscribe. Right, if you are here for the first time, thank you so much. Have a good day.